All right, folks, welcome back. It is finally time to jump into the 300 Winchester Magnum. Today's video, we're going to be having a look at our new Thompson Center Compass bolt-action rifle that's going to be our test platform. We're going to talk about all of the crap that we had to buy for reloading. We're going to go through the process of reloading, and then we're going to hit the range and see how it shoots. Now, I can't really get started until I tell you guys how this all began. I was doing a live stream a couple months ago, I think it was in September. One of my awesome viewers did a super chat donation and said that he wanted to see 300 Winchester Magnum. And then somebody else jumped on and added some more money. And before we knew it, right there in that live stream, enough donations rolled in to pay for the gun and the stuff I needed to reload for it. So I kind of got forced into this. I live in Kentucky. I have absolutely no use for a 300 Winchester Magnum. It's just way too much gun for the hunting and shooting I need to do. Nevertheless, I'm pretty excited about it. This is my first experience with a belted Magnum, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Now, we've had a lot of projects going on around here, and I've had some other things, going on, so it has been 3 or 4 months since I bought the gun, right after that live stream. But I did at least warn them at the time that it was going to be a while. It was always going to be a while. So here's a really crappy look at the gun. We'll get a much better look at it once we're outside on the range. But it's a Thompson Center Compass, just like my 6.5 Creedmoor that we've been shooting here on the channel that's been such a great performer. That's why we went with the Thompson Center. It also gives me the opportunity to evaluate another cartridge on this platform, because since the 6.5 Creedmoor's been so good, some of my viewers have been buying the rifle in other calibers and not having a great time with it. I remember one email in particular, a guy had bought it in the little, was it 204 Ruger, and he was having all sorts of problems. Couldn't get it to shoot, the throat was a mile long, and things just weren't going well for him. I think I heard a similar story from someone who had bought it in 308, and they were having problems getting it to shoot. So I've never really known whether the success with the 6.5 Creedmoor is simply due to the inherent accuracy of that cartridge, and they happen to be chambering it pretty good, or whether the Thompson Center Compass is just awesome and can shoot anything, right? So this just gives us a second look at the platform. I can tell you already, I'm having some problems. Here in this video, we are not going to shoot the first shots. I shot 20 rounds through this gun, like, I don't know, 6 or 8 weeks ago, whenever I was filming the update video for the Creedmoor Compass. I thought during that video, while I'm showing off a 1500 round update for that gun, I would introduce this gun, go ahead and shoot the first few rounds through it, and see how it did. Well, I ended up cutting that section out of the video. For one reason, the video was over an hour long, but a bigger reason was the groups with this gun sucked. Oh God, they were awful. 2 to 3 inch groups. And I wanted the opportunity to investigate the matter, put some more rounds through it, maybe do some hand loading before I, put that crappy performance out there. So we might be getting into a mess. This might be the start of an epic tire fire. I don't know. But the Compass itself, this is a 24-inch barrel, which you can't see the end of, but it's that way. It does have a threaded muzzle like all of the Compasses, which is pretty awesome because I like shooting with a suppressor. I shoot a lot, I've got neighbors, I try to keep the noise down as much as I can. So that's a huge bonus for the Compass in my book. The twist rate is a 1 in 10 twist. So we should be able to shoot up to the heavy crap, as far as I know. My research into the cartridge thus far seemed to indicate that the 1 in 10 twist is good enough for the super heavy stuff. I've got a set of Weaver low skeleton rings. These are pretty inexpensive rings, and the scope I threw on it is a 6-24 Vortex Viper PST Gen 1. This just happened to be the scope that wasn't currently sitting on a rifle. I've got 3 different 24 power scopes that just kind of get moved around here on the channel to whatever we happen to be shooting at the time. This is the one that was available, so it's on there. Now, one thing I've done that I'm not going to cover in this video, I went ahead and adjusted the trigger like I did in the Creedmoor update video. So I've covered the trigger adjustment so much in that series, it seems kind of redundant to do it all again. So the triggers are exactly the same. If you want to see how it's adjusted, the original Compass video and the update Compass video covers that pretty thoroughly. And I'll throw links up here, like if you need to bail out and go watch those first, there should be a little pop-up happening in the top right-hand corner. I'll also have links at the end of the video as well. Does that cover? I think that pretty much covers like what we need to talk about with the gun right now. One more thing I should mention is I had to buy another magazine for this 300 Winchester Magnum. The one that came with it is all screwed up. There's this little, let me show you on the good one. Here's what one's supposed to look like. There's this little spring-loaded paddle that gets compressed as you load the rounds. And for some reason, this one, it feels like it's hung up on something, but I don't think it is. It's no longer working. I believe these are like glued together, so I don't think I can get it apart to really work on it. But the good news is the magazines aren't crazy expensive. I don't remember exactly what I paid. I probably should have looked that up. I think it was around $20 to $25. So I probably could have gotten with Thompson Center and had them send me a new one, and maybe I'll still do that at some point, but it just seemed like a hassle I didn't want to deal with. So I just bought another one. So let's move on to the reloading components and talk those through a little bit. First of all, primers. That's an easy one. I picked up the CCI 250s, the Magnum large rifle primers. And the choice was easy because this is the only one that was available locally, and I didn't feel like paying a hazmat charge, so hey, this is what I could get. But honestly, I probably would have went with these anyway. My normal viewers will know I'm a huge fan of CCI primers. We shoot them in probably 80% of the videos on this channel. So I've got pretty high confidence that we're going to be okay there with primers. Oh, I should have mentioned, I did pick up some factory ammo, and that's what I've already shot in the gun that shot super crappy. Here was the first one. This is 165 grain PPU. It's a soft point boat tail. These were pretty inexpensive, so I figured this might kind of cover the inexpensive side of things. Next is the Hornady American Whitetail that uses the 180 grain interlock bullet. Pretty solid deer hunting round, you'd think. So I figured we'd try those. And I got a box of the Hornady Precision Hunter that uses the 200 grain ELDX. So a 165, a 180, and a 200 in some factory ammo. I thought that would let us cover the meat of the bullet weight range and see how they did. Now on the bullet side of things, I haven't bought any bullets at all that are specific for this project because I've got 30 caliber bullets running out of my ears. These are actually the five options we're going to load up and test with today. The heaviest is the 220 grain Sierra Match King. I've got a bunch of these because this was my favorite, most accurate bullet to shoot in 300 blackout subsonics. So I bought a bunch. I'm hoping we can get them to shoot well in the Win Mag. Next is the 208 grain Hornady ELD Match. Same deal. I had these laying around from 300 blackout subsonic testing. Next is the 185 grain Berger Hybrid Target. I've got a couple boxes of these. I bought them to shoot in 308, and we're still going to shoot them in 308, but we're also going to shoot a few here in the Win Mag today. Next is the 175 grain Sierra Match King. A little bit lighter bullet. By all accounts, this is a spectacular bullet. And the last is the 168 grain Gold Dot, the Speer Gold Dot. This is the heaviest option that Speer is offering in the Gold Dot line. I've been shooting these bullets in 6.5 millimeter and 22 caliber in some other cartridges. They seem to be really, really excellent shooting bullets. So I thought this might be a good light option for the 300 Win Mag. All right, so on the powder side of things, let's start with Hodgdon. A couple of these I already owned, mainly for 6.5 Creedmoor, H4350 and H4831 SC. We're actually going to be shooting H4350 with the 175 grain Sierra Match King today. It shows up in a whole lot of load data sources with the lighter bullets for this cartridge, but the one I bought specifically for this project is Hodgdon H1000. This seems to be an incredibly popular powder, so I've actually got a couple pounds of it. It's one thing about these huge charge weights, well, compared to what I normally shoot, they're huge, but you know, charge weights up near 80 grains at times. A pound of powder is going to go pretty quick. We're going to shoot H1000 with the 185 grain Berger Hybrid Target today, but I think H1000 would be a decent choice all the way up to the 220 grain Match King, the heaviest bullet we're going to shoot today. So seems like a pretty flexible option here in the Win Mag. Now on the Alliance side of things, we've got Reloader 22, 23, 26, and Power Pro 4000 MR. Reloader 26 gets incredible velocities in 6.5 Creedmoor, and it shows up here in the Win Mag load data with some pretty awesome velocities as well. We're going to shoot this with two different bullets today. The lightest bullet, the 168 grain Gold Dot, we're going to use this, and the heaviest bullet, the 220 grain Sierra Match King, we're going to shoot them both with Reloader 26. Reloader 23 is a little bit faster burning than 26, I believe, but still right in the good spot here for the for the Win Mag, we're going to shoot Reloader 23 with the 208 grain ELD match. Reloader 23 is kind of like Reloader 16, if you're familiar with Reloader 16. Like, it's supposed to be a very temperature stable powder. So I'll be pleased if we get good performance with Reloader 23 just for that reason. And I think Reloader 22 is kind of close, but it's going to be a little bit more temperature sensitive, kind of like you hear people complaining about Reloader 15, Reloader 17, I think Reloader 19. 22 is kind of in the same boat from what I read. So we're not shooting it today, but it'll be a great powder for this cartridge, and you'll see it pretty soon. Yeah, and last up, 4000 MR. I've had good luck with the entire Alliant Power Pro series from 300 MP to 2000 MR to Power Pro Varmint. So I'm hoping 4000 MR will be a good choice in the 300 Win Mag. The only other one I've got to show you here is some Vitavori N160. There are some slower burning Vitavori options that I want to get a hold of for the Win Mag, but N160 should work fine, especially with lighter bullets. We're not shooting it today, but it'll show up here pretty soon in a future video. The most difficult choice when I was buying components for this cartridge was brass. I ended up going with Hornady. I bought 100 pieces of Hornady brass, but no matter what brass you talk about, it seems there is all sorts of reports of it being terrible. It's like there's no really good 300 Winchester Magnum brass. There is an extremely expensive option. I think it was Norma, but I just didn't want to shell out the cash. So we went with the Hornady, and I'm hoping for the best here. We'll see how it goes. Another good thing about Hornady is that I had just bought 40 rounds of Hornady factory ammo, so we can recover that brass, so we've really got 140 pieces to work with. And like I mentioned, I've already fired 20 pieces through the gun, so the brass from those shots, I've gone ahead and cleaned them up, and they're going to be ready to load here in this video. So we've got some once fired brass to look at and make comparisons with and all of that stuff. So Hornady is going to be what we're primarily shooting for the time being. So I guess next I need to go through the dies and stuff that I got. So let me switch camera angles for that. All right, I guess the first thing I should mention is I did pick up a loading tray. Now, what I've been using in other cartridges are the Frankfurt Arsenal Perfect Fit reloading trays. Like here's a number 4 that I use for 6.5 Grendel. I really like these loading trays that have a nice fit. So I definitely wanted one for the 300 Winchester Magnum, but I was ordering from Midway, and they don't sell that much Frankfurt Arsenal stuff. What they've got is this National Metallic brand. And if you look, it's like all of the exact same stuff as Frankfurt Arsenal. So I don't know what the deal is between Midway and Frankfurt Arsenal, but they've got knockoffs or rebranded or differently branded stuff that looks exactly the same. It's the same with like ammo boxes. Ooh, speaking of that, I need to go, I bought some ammo boxes as well. But I went with this National Metallic brand. You can see right there, 300 Win Mag. The fit, it's not bad, I guess. I guess you got to make room for the belt, so it can't quite be as tight as some other cartridges are. Man, just look at that. I can't wait to start playing around with this beast. Lost my train of thought. Yeah. So we've got a nice loading tray. Let me go grab those ammo boxes before I forget. All right, here we go. I went with the MTM cases. Get all that crap out of there. Let's see how a piece of brass fits. Yep, pretty straightforward stuff. This is the MTM R50. Yeah, R50 series Magnum rifle. So that should do a fine job. And I did get 2 of them. What is wrong with the color on my camera? It's all freaky looking. All right, there we go. The white balance setting on my camera got all jacked up. All right, so as far as a bullet seating die goes, I'm actually going to use the die from from this kit, from my 308 Winchester Hornady custom grade set. Their custom grade seating dies are universal by caliber. This neck portion right here, which this case hasn't been resized, so a little bit tight in there right now, but once it's resized, it won't be. That's the only part that makes contact, so there's no difference in the dies. I've got the adjustment thingy here. This is a great upgrade to this die. And I've also got, so it's got the seating stem that came with it, and I've also got a seating stem that's specifically for the ELDX bullets. And this should give a better fit for most of our high ballistic coefficient bullets, VLD bullets, that sort of junk. That should help. So that's bullet seating. Pretty straightforward there. Now on the resizing side of things get a little bit more complicated. I ended up buying this. This is the 300 Win Mag match grade full size die. This is a full sizing die, that uses a collet at the neck. So let me pop this guy out real quick. There's our decapping rod, and you can see this thing's got this like C-clip sort of retention going on here, and it's a loose and wobbly fit, which is a good thing, right? We want this to be able to self-center and find that flash hole to pop out the primers. You'll notice right now that it does not have an expander ball, but this screws off, and the die actually does come with a normal expander ball. This is going to take a little bit of thought and some experimentation, I think. I think we need to not use an expander ball here, since this is a collet die. And actually, so here's the main die body. Down in there is the collet. If we turn it and smack it, nothing comes out because there's no collet in there. I'm an idiot. When you buy this die, it does not come with any collet. So I picked up two different collets. There you go, match grade bushing. So that is a 0.332 inch and a 0.333 inch. So let me grab the 0.332 guy and we'll have a look at it. There you go, you see it says 0.332 on it. So this is what, at the top of the press stroke, this guy right here is what's going to resize that neck. The neck goes up in there and it sets the outer diameter of the neck. Now what I'm thinking is, okay, so we got just the right collet that gives us the neck tension we want, and we're going to talk more about that here in just a minute. But okay, so we've got the right collet that gives us the neck tension we want. Why would we want to drag an expander ball through it to open it back up? We've already kind of set it the way we want it. So it's nice they include one, but I don't think at first, if we choose our collet properly, I don't think we need it. Now, this is my first experience with a collet die of any sort. And what I'm wondering is, okay, let's say I crush the mouth of one of my cases. I step on it or something before I get it picked up and it gets pinched a little bit. No big deal. That should iron right out during resizing normally, right? Expander through there spreads it right out. But I don't think pushing it up into a collet would necessarily iron out all of those issues. So maybe that's what that's for. Maybe if you got one that's out of round or needs a little bit more attention to get back to being round, you put on your expander ball, run it through to iron out the problems, then take off the expander ball and then run it one more time to let the collet do its job. I don't know. I didn't really research this or read the instructions or anything. I probably should have. Well, I read the instructions briefly. It didn't seem to cover it. Now, the problem is these stupid collets are $20 a pop. Freaking crazy. So I did a little bit of math and decided to go with the 332 and the 333. I'll go ahead and tell you I chose poorly. We'll cover it here in just a minute, but I'm going to be buying some more collets, at least one more. But the guidelines on how to choose a collet are that you take a round, like here is a piece of the Hornady Precision Hunter. Now luckily we're using Hornady brass, so the odds are good that the neck thickness here is going to be the same as the big old bag of brass I bought. Now if I switched brands and let's say that the neck thickness is 1 or 2 thousandths thinner, that's going to need a completely different collet. So here's how they tell you to choose your collet. We take some measurements around the neck. So let's see, there's a 335, 335, 334.5, 334.5. All right, let's call it 335. Now, the instructions right here, bushing size, it says measure the outside diameter of your loaded cartridge, subtract 2 to 3 thousandths from the neck diameter to determine bushing size. So we started with 335. So if we subtract 2, that's a 333. And if we subtract 3, it's a 332. So it looks like I made the right choice. We'll come back to this because I think I might need a 331 in the end, but we'll talk more about it here in just a little bit. So here's our 332. To install it, you just drop it down with the writing pointing towards you. There it went down in there. I should take off the expander, put this guy back on. There's that. Now this guy just screws down in there, and here this is how you adjust the depth of your decapping pin. Actually, that guy might need to go just a smidgen lower, but I think it's okay. But yeah, screw it. We're here, we got the camera rolling, might as well. So loosen that one and then screw that one down and then tighten that one back up, and it's out a little bit farther now. So it seems like a really nicely made die. Like the knurling is just beautiful. I really like the decapping pin that's got some wiggle to it, and I'm hoping this is going to do a nice job for us. So there's the part number 046240. And don't forget, it does not come with any collets. Now, the same fine gentleman that recommended that I go with that die actually bought this for me. He's one of my supporters over on Patreon. He just got in touch and said, hey, I want to send you this. This is an additional sizing die. I'm trying to remember exactly what he calls it, what the guy calls it. This is the company, Innovative Technologies. The website is larrywillis.com. What this die does is provide additional sizing right here above the belt. Because apparently a standard sizing die just doesn't do a good job right there in that section above the belt. And that will grow over a couple firings, and eventually you won't be able to get your bolt closed, and your standard full-length sizing die isn't enough to get additional firings out of it. So this is a curious little die. So it's got this guy that just goes up inside of there. This actually goes in your reloading press upside down. So this is on the bottom. What you do is you take your case that you full-length resize it first with a standard full-length sizing die, and then actually what you do, one side of this, the top side, acts as a case gauge. So if we drop this down in here, this case has not been resized, but you can see how it's not going all the way down in. That means this portion's too big. Now, the full-length sizing die is going to take out some of that. So after we do that, we'll need to use this gauge to find out whether we need to use this die to size that area further. Let me grab a new piece of brass. All right, here's a new piece, and you can see it drops right down in, even has a little bit of wiggle room, which is what you'd expect, right, from a new piece of brass. Now, I'm going to use the new piece here to demonstrate this because it might be hard to get this off of the piece that hasn't been resized. But let's say this is a piece we just resized and we want to reduce the diameter right there above the belt a little bit. You take the collet, you slide it over the case, and you push this down until it's touching the belt. Then you put this in the shell holder in the press just like normal, and the die is installed above it, and it goes up in there. It squeezes this collet, and it just kind of squeezes right there around that belt. So this is going to be extremely useful, and I really appreciate Eric picking this up for me. I think this is going to save us a lot of money on brass, because apparently this is such a problem. I mean, a lot of people only get a couple firings out of their 300 Win Mag brass because of this issue. So over on the Larry Willis website, they claim you can get 8 million firings out of a piece of brass when using this. Not really, but you can get a whole lot more firings. So this should be a good thing. It's not cheap. I think it was $100. Let me look that up real quick. That seems high. Yep, it damn sure is. It is $96.95. So yeah, not cheap. We're going to need to get a whole lot more firings out of some brass before this pays for itself. But it's certainly a very neat idea. And thanks again to Eric for picking this up for me. Tell you what, you guys that already shoot 300 Winchester Magnum, let me know how big of a problem this is. Do you only get 2 or 3 firings out of your brass due to the size above the belt? Thinking maybe we'll do a bit of a test here. Maybe some brass will use it and other brass we won't, and we'll see how many firings we get in the compass before we absolutely need it. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. And the other thing I picked up was a shell holder. This is the RCBS shell holder number 4. I completely forgot to buy a freaking shell holder. I actually sat down to start filming this video the day before yesterday, got everything, like the whole spread set out, fresh battery in the camera, and then I realized I don't have a shell holder. For some reason, I'm the worst about forgetting a shell holder on the equipment list. This is an RCBS number 4. This was the only one I could find locally. Should be just fine, but I kind of, it annoys me that they don't put the number like where everybody else puts the number. Like this is a Redding and has the number right there. But then again, at least they're nice enough to put RCBS on it so I can remember what brand it is. So yeah, don't forget to order a shell holder. I need to get like a Forster coax press that doesn't use shell holders, right? Then I never have to worry about it. All right, anything else? I don't think so. I think everything else is pretty much standard stuff. We will be using the Hornady headspace comparator kit. The 300 Winchester Magnum uses the E420. There's a pot joke in here somewhere, but we're going to pass it by. But yeah, this is, it goes down, sits on the shoulder, helps you measure your headspace. So we're going to be making use of that quite a bit. And also the Hornady bullet comparator, which is over here actually on these calipers. This is, of course, the 30 caliber one. And that allows you to measure like this from cartridge base to the ogive of the bullet, which gives you a more accurate and repeatable result than measuring to the tip. Right, tipped bullets like this Hornady ELDX are generally pretty uniform, but things like our Sierra Match King or the Berger Hybrid Target that have a little hollow point, sometimes those are irregular and you'll get overall length readings that vary a bit. So the bullet comparator gives a more consistent reading overall. All right, let's see. Anything else? I don't think so. I think we're ready to get reloading. So let's start out by looking at the brass I have fired. Most of what I've got is the Hornady, and let's take a couple measurements to compare. You know, this is fire form to our chamber. So let's take a couple measurements to compare our chamber to a new piece of brass. Okay, this is the headspace comparator. So we put this guy right in there, and it looks like 2.277 is our number. And we should be able to pick out any piece of brass that we fired in the gun, like there's a random guy from the middle. They should all be the same, 2.277. Now we can even grab a piece of the PPU brass. There it is. It should be the same or very, very close. 2.277. So that's what our chamber is, 2.277. And these two pieces here, I got mixed up of which one's fired and which one's new. Yeah, it looks like this is the new one. All right, let's look at a new piece. It's looking like 2.263. So that is 14 thousandths shorter than our fired case. That's a lot. So whenever we load up and take this new piece of brass and fire it, that shoulder is going to blow forward 14 thousandths. Grab another new piece out of the bag and see if it's the same. 2.263. That's the same number we saw before, right? Yeah, I think it is. Now what we can do, whenever we resize our case, we don't want to go back this far. We don't want to continuously set that shoulder back and then blow it forward that much. It's going to be way too much work on our brass. What we can do is take our fired piece that's sitting at 2.277, and when we're setting up our full-length sizing die, we'll only screw it down enough so that maybe this goes down to 2.275 or 2.274 perhaps. Just a couple extra thousandths of headspace so that our gun's going to chamber the round easily, but not so much that we're constantly blowing the shoulder 15 thousandths forward like a new piece of brass. Now, the next thing I want to look at is the thickness of the neck. And earlier, you don't necessarily need a micrometer like this to get an idea of your neck thickness. What you can do is, like earlier, whenever we were measuring, remember measuring like this, and my calipers were still zeroed for the headspace comparator. So what was our number? Yeah, 335, remember that? So we know our bullet is 308, which means we have 27 extra thousandths to account for here, right? Check my math. Yeah, 308, 335 minus 308, 27. So if we assume that half of that is on one side, half of it is on the other, that tells us that this is about 13.5 thousandths thick, right? 13.5 makes 27, and then 308 of bullet, and we're back at 335. So let's see if the calipers agree with that, being about 13.5. These guys, if I can get it to focus properly, yep, there's 0. Put our case neck down in there. And we have just over 13 at that spot. Let's go to another spot. That spot's actually a little bit under 13. There's another spot that's right at 14. So it seems like 13.5 thousandths is about right. But at the same time, it looks like this stuff might not have the most consistent neck wall thickness. Now, I do have the tools to turn the necks for 30 caliber. I have a 30 caliber K&M neck turning tool. So maybe down the road, we'll do a little bit of that with these and get these necks more consistent. But for the time being, we're going to roll with what we've got. Now, 335 is going to be our final diameter, and we know that our bushing is 332. So you'd expect about 3 thousandths of neck tension there, right? But I don't think it's quite that much, because when it goes up in the die, I think you maybe get a little bit of spring back. I don't know. After we do some resizing, we'll measure some necks and see if they're coming out 332, or maybe they're just a little bit bigger. But at least here with the Hornady brass, it seems like we do have some neck tension, right? We've got a little something to grab a hold of the bullet. So that brings me to the PPU brass. Here's one of the loaded rounds from that box. Have a look at that. 331. 331.5, 332. So let's call it 331 for a second. And remember back to the rules about picking your bushings, you go 2 or 3 less than the number you measured. So if we wanted to use PPU brass, we would need a 328 bushing. Like the smallest bushing I bought is 4 thousandths too big. So here is a piece of the PPU brass that I resized with that 332 collet in the die. So this has been resized. And let me grab a bullet. Here's a 220 grain Sierra Match King. It goes straight through. So that's what you're getting yourself into when you choose to get a collet die. You need to know what that neck wall thickness is before you get your collets. Now I don't mind, we've got plenty of Hornady brass. We're not going to shoot this PPU brass anyway. I was planning to, I wanted to test with it and play around with it and give it a try, but it's not worth paying another $20 for a collet just so I can use up 20 pieces of once fired brass. That's throwing good money after bad. So the question is the 332 tight enough for the Hornady brass? The measurements we've taken so far looks like it's going to be. So we'll see how that actually works out when we get to resizing. And speaking of that, I think it's time to start some resizing. Yeah, let's do that. All right, so let's pull our match grade full-size die out again. And remember, we are not using the expander. Yeah, that little guy in there. We also need our shell holder. So let's go ahead and snap that guy in place. Make sure I got enough room to work the press without bumping the camera tripod. All right, so this sets up pretty much like any other full-length sizing die. We raise our ram. We screw the die down until we feel it touch the shell holder. Okay, there it is. So it's touching, but just very lightly. I want to go a little bit further. There we go. So it's still pretty lightly touching, but it's enough to take up the slack in the press. Once we have a cartridge in there and we're resizing, the shell holder probably won't even touch the die anymore. All right, first thing, we need some lube. And today I'm going to use Imperial Sizing Die Wax. This stuff is really awesome. Can of it lasts forever, like absolutely forever. So you just get a little bit of that on your fingers, kind of get them greased up a little bit, and you generally only have to go back for more every couple cases. So we're just going to slather that on this dude. And the good thing is we don't have to worry about lubricating the inside of the neck because we're not pulling an expander ball through it, right? All of our sizing is going to be done from the outside by the collet, so no need to lube inside the neck, which is good because a lot of times it's a pain in the butt. If you're not going to tumble the brass after you've resized it, you need to get in there with a Q-tip or something and get the lube out. It's a pain in the butt. So this is nice. We know that our headspace number was at 77. It ended in 77. Yeah, 2.277. And I'll tell you what we can do. Let's go ahead and zero the caliper. So there we go. So let's set our die until we read maybe a -3 here. All right, up and in. That didn't really take a whole lot of force. And let's see if we touched the shoulder at all. I'm assuming we probably didn't. Nope, it still reads 0. So let's screw this guy down a little bit more. Just a smidgen. Yeah, just a little bit there. And let's run it back through again. We can have a look between our shell holder and the die. It looks like we're pretty darn close. If it's not touching, it's almost touching. I think we're just getting contact. So we've moved it about 1/2 thousandth. So let's go another little tweak and try it again. Okay, so it looks like we've bumped it about 1.5 thousandths. And honestly, that would probably be just fine. Like with a bolt action rifle, you can just neck size and not even bump the shoulder. And you're usually fine for a couple firings. So just a tiny little bit of bump would be just fine. But let's go ahead and tweak it on down and try and hit that 3 number. Okay, there's just a little bit more. All right, looks like -2.5. So here's what we're doing. I'm just going to breathe on it. Yeah, I just breathed on it. And then we'll make sure that lock ring is pretty tight. Now let's move on to the next case. We'll come back and hit that one more time here in just a second. But let's see what this guy gives us. Up and in. Back down. And now this one's reading right at 3 thousandths. Good. So it looks like we've got our die set right. Let me go back to the other one and run it through one more time. Yep, there's that one at 3 thousandths. So let me go get a rag to wipe these off. And then let's take a few measurements of a resized case and compare it to the fired case. So the first and most important thing is, are we going to be able to have some neck tension here to hold on to our bullet? It looks like we are. So like that PPU case where it fell through, these are not falling through. So we've got enough to grip the bullet maybe, but exactly how much do we have? Remember, we were using a 332 collet in our die, so it's kind of hard to show you on measurements like this. 333. There's a long 333, 333. Okay, let's look at the other piece, 333. So it looks like our number is 333. So that's a 332 collet. So some of that might be the brass springing back once it's, goes through the collet and shrinks down. Maybe there's a little bit of spring back, or maybe Hornady made the collet a touch large. I don't know. I don't really care. But remember, once we seat a bullet, our final number is going to be 335. So we've got 2/1000ths of neck tension. Now, people run 1, 2, 3/1000ths of neck tension. So I think we're in a good spot here with the Hornady brass, with the 332 collet. But I bet if we threw the 333 collet in there, we would just barely have enough. So I think I'm going to buy a 331 to kind of cover the full range. 331 to 333 seems like it'll be the right, range so that we can play around with neck tension and find out what gives us the best accuracy in this gun. All right, some other measurements here. Right below the shoulder, right about there, I'm getting 488. Let's see what it is on a case that hasn't been resized. So it's looking like a 489 or a 490 I'm seeing sometimes. That's good. So we're really not moving the body of the case there that much. Seems like our chamber is reasonably tight there in the body. Now if I butt the calipers right up against the belt, this one has not been resized. I'm getting 512. There's a 513. Let me look at another piece. Yep, this guy's reading about 512. So let's look at one of the pieces we resized. It is also reading 512. So it looks like right up against that belt, our die really didn't do much. Let's look at a new piece. Now this new piece is 506. Yep, here's another one. 505, 506 is what I'm reading. So let's grab our Larry Willis die and use it as a case gauge. Yep, if you remember this end of the die, nice. Not so much slop. If you remember earlier when we put a brand new piece into it, quite a bit of horizontal slop there. But our resized piece fits pretty tight, but it freely goes all the way down there. So it looks like here, at least first firing with this gun, I just had to open my mouth. The second one I put in, it kind of hung up there. Now it's going freely. That first time in there, kind of stuck just a touch. Yeah, so it's very close. Now, if I remember the instructions correctly, I think 510 is the goal whenever you're using, this die. I think that's what he has you do, is take it down to 510. Yeah, resize the expansion ring on your case just above the belt as needed, or down to 510. So what was our number on these? Yep, our number, let's see there, that one's 511. I seem to remember maybe getting some 512s here somewhere. Yeah, 510 and 511 are the numbers I'm getting. So I guess we can play around with it here and go through the setup, but it just doesn't look like my brass is needing this at this point. So what you do is get the collet out of this guy. There it went. Okay, there's the collet. You remove the lock ring completely and you feed it up underneath and thread it in from the bottom. And the instructions say to go all the way. So there it is all the way in. Doesn't seem like we would need this lock ring, so I'm not even going to worry about putting it on there. Now the collet has got one end with a 45-degree angle cut and the other end does not. The one that does not have the angle is what goes down toward your belt. So it says push it all the way down until it contacts the belt. Make sure the 45-degree angle is up. Then we slide it into the shell holder and raise the ram. Now this is done by feel, right? We're not going all the way up. Oh, I almost forgot. He does mention in the instructions that you really need to use lube on this guy, and I didn't. Luckily, I don't think I pushed it all that hard, so hopefully this guy will come off. Yeah, it slid right off. I hadn't pushed it hard enough yet, but he says to lube it, and he specifically recommends the Redding Imperial Sizing Die Wax that we're already using. Love that stuff. It's good stuff. Okay. We're back on, and this time we're lubed. And I guess you just raise it up and kind of, it's a feel thing. I don't think you necessarily go all the way. So let's see how far that got us. Yeah, that was able to slip off. He does mention in the instructions that if you get it stuck, what you can do is flip the case over, put the case mouth on your shell holder, and then raise it very lightly and let the press help you pop it off of there. So that didn't take hardly any force. It wasn't enough to booger up our newly resized case mouth. So there's that. Let me wipe this guy off. We'll see if that collet left any markings on the brass. So we did get a couple very, very light marks on the brass. Nothing bad at all. I was afraid the little fingers of the collet might pinch the brass or leave it looking like a case that was shot in a fluid chamber. So that guy's done. Now we can, pop it in the top. And let's take another actual measurement. Yep, it's now at 510. So we didn't do much, but we did enough. Sweet, I like that. That's pretty cool. What we'll do once I finish resizing the ones that have been fired, we'll run them all through there, as a case gauge. And if we run into any that need this guy, we'll use it. So I'll just leave this guy in the press and we'll set the collet right over there. Get my fingers lubed back up and go ahead and finish the rest of these. Oh, that sucks. I can't leave it in the press here on the Redding T7 turret press because when you try and turn the turret, it bumps into that. So I'm going to have to remove it. That kind of sucks. But it's not a huge deal. Not a huge deal. Tell you what I'll do so I don't forget. Each case, I'll go ahead and resize it. And then as I'm putting it back on the loading tray, I'll go ahead and check them here. Yep, that guy is not going all the way in there. Interesting. I tell you what, let me finish up resizing these cases and then we'll come back and revisit this die real quick. I don't know if I mentioned, but we're going to use fired brass, the once fired brass, 15 pieces of it. So we're going to use 15 pieces of it and then 10 pieces of new brass because I want to load up 25 rounds today. So I got done with my once fired brass and was about to start on our new brass. And then I realized that my camera sucks and never wants to focus. All right, let's try this again. So I switched over to the new brass and I was about to run them through and I started thinking like, well, we've got our 332 collet in our sizing die. What's the next size on this new brass? And come to find out, some of it in some places is like 331. Now remember, our brass is coming out of this die at 333. So this new brass, the necks on it are not going to get touched. Now I'm lucky, it looks like this batch of Hornady brass is in pretty good shape, but if you've ordered any brass at all, you know that sometimes you get some with goofy case mouths that are out of round. So this guy's about to get less round than it used to be. Okay, look at that one. You've pulled a new piece of brass out of a box that looked like that, haven't you? Sure you have. So what would we do with that? And I want to go ahead and run it through this die setup and see what it does. I don't think it's going to get us where we need to be. Like it's not going to straighten that out, I don't think. Okay, up in there, no resistance whatsoever. This, new piece of brass isn't even touching most of the sizing die. Yep, and out it comes, and we still have a wonky neck. So I think our only option here is to go ahead and pull out our decapping pin and replace this guy with the expander. Okay, so now we've got an expander that's going to go through and iron out the problems in the neck. I'm going to go ahead and put a touch of lube on this guy and screw it back in. So the question is, what's the next size going to be after it has that expander pulled through it? Now, on the way up, of course, the expander, we're going to run into some resistance as it overcomes that dent. So up in a little ways, and there it is. Yep, I can feel it going over the expander. There it went, all the way up, all the way down. And honestly, that's still, like it's back to being round, but I can still tell where the dent was. And I'm thinking we might still be slightly out of round. Can you see that when I turn it? Let me wipe the crap off of it, make sure I'm not seeing things. Yeah, maybe I'm seeing things a little bit. But let's see what diameter we were left with. 331, 331, 332. So this is good news. It tells me that a fired case that goes up, gets sized with our 332 expander ball, and comes out 333, remember? It's probably not even going to touch that expander on the way out. because this case had the expander run through it, and 333 is the absolute biggest spot I can find on this guy. So the expander ball may not be too bad to use even with a collet. It's small enough to where it'll help iron out any problems going up, but it doesn't stretch it out past what the collet. Now, if we went to a smaller collet, let's say we went to a 330 collet, 2,000 smaller, then I assume the expander would probably be, undoing the work we did in the collet. Go up, get sized to 330, and then get dragged over the expander and be back out at 331 or 332. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm gonna run this one back through one more time. Yeah, I was just kind of feeling that expander ball there. Yeah, I think we're just fine. So I'm gonna run the rest of these new pieces with the expander in place. Yep, I think it's just barely touching. And this new brass, we're gonna have a little bit more neck tension than we do with our resized brass, which is no big deal. No big deal at all. Now, of course, these new cases, you remember how far that shoulder was set back, like 15 thousandths less than our fired cases. So this die is not touching the shoulder whatsoever. We're just kind of ironing out those necks a touch. All right, so now we can get back to that other task we were talking about. We're going to use this as a case gauge. Like that guy needs a little bit of love. See, not quite touching. Same thing with this guy. Same thing with that guy. So I think earlier I just happened to pick an oddball that actually fit. So pretty much all of these need a little bit of work here with this die. So let me get it reinstalled in the press. All right, installs from the bottom. We're all the way up. A little bit of lube on the case. Slide the collet all the way down to the belt, and up it goes. Well, like I was messing with earlier, I'm wondering, like if we just go ahead and go all the way in. There you go. That's the press all the way up. There was definitely some work going on there, and I think the collet's going to be, oh, it actually slipped off by hand. That's good. So back in the top, as a case gauge, it goes in no problem whatsoever. So the die definitely did its job. And let's take a quick measurement. Yeah, so I'm getting 511 all the way around the case. Good. I was afraid if, we raised the ram all the way, it might overdo things, but it doesn't look like it does. Remember, his instructions said you either go as far as you need to go or down to 0.510. I think if we needed more than this, we could drop the die a little bit, right? Like maybe we screw the die down a half turn and then put the lock ring on top. That would let us get the collet a little bit farther up into the die. But this seems to be perfect. So I'll just go ahead and do that with all of them. Put them in, all the way up. Yep, the collet is sliding off of them pretty well. Then back in the top as a case gauge. No problem. And on to the next one. Goodness gracious, I've almost filled up a whole memory card and we're still resizing. This is going to be a very long video, but that's okay. Like first time with a cartridge, first time messing with belted magnums, a lot of firsts going on here. So I want to talk out everything I'm doing, not only to help those of you who may be in the same spot, but also to invite you all to let me know, in the comments if I'm doing something stupid or I missed something or I overlooked something. I am always happy to hear that. It's all about learning, man, right? All right, I think that covers resizing enough, so I'll get these guys finished, get the lube wiped off of them, and then we'll move on. We got a little bit more brass work to do before we get to the good stuff. Okay, so now that our brass has been resized, now we need to double check its length. So I pulled out the Hornady manual here. You'll see that the max case length is 2.620. And while we're in here, might as well make note that the maximum cartridge overall length is 3.340. We'll just make note of that for later. But 2.620 is the number that's important to us right now. So I'm going to go through each case. This is a fired one, 2.607, 2.604. You can see these are shorter than the trim length, which was 2.610. So these are all quite short. I'll go through and measure the rest of them. This is a new piece of brass, and these guys are a little bit longer, 2.614, 2.613. So it looks like in their factory ammo, they trim them a little bit shorter. So it's 2.613, good. All right, so I measured the rest and they all came out good. The next thing I want to do is deburr the flash holes down in there. A lot of times brass will have a little booger on the inside of the case. If right down there by the flash hole. I guess a new case would probably be easier to show you on, but yep, the inside of that hole, inside the case, sometimes has a burr. So for the longest time, I used the Lyman flash hole deburring tool. You just put this guy down in the case, find the flash hole, and actually this stop isn't far enough up, but you just put it in there, twist around a little bit, and call it good. But recently, a viewer named Thomas sent me a little bit of an upgrade. This is the Redding. Yeah, the Redding flash hole deburring tool. Now with the Lyman, unless you set up the stop, there's nothing to kind of keep you cutting to a consistent depth. And if you want to use the stop, then you really need to have all of your cases trimmed to the exact same length. And this is a good situation. Like if you remember, the new brass is about 10 thousandths longer than our once fired brass that we're using. So we would have to account for that with this, whatever. So the Redding, now the Redding unit up here at the cutting end has got a little bit of a built-in stop there. We do have a pilot, which I need to adjust this and tighten it down, that will keep our case aligned properly, but this guy right here keeps us from going too deep. So let me put this guy down in here and see if I can find the stinking flash hole. There we go, finally found it, and we'll bring the pilot down a little bit, but this pilot doesn't quite want to fit in there. See if they're all being that way. Yeah, that one went in. It is an extremely tight fit. Tell you what I might need to do first. We need to chamfer and deburr the mouth of the case. Let me grab our little deburring and chamfering tool here, and let's kind of go at the inside of this dude real quick. All right, so that cut a little chamfer on the inside. This is the one that we couldn't get it to go through, so let's see if now it'll, yeah, now it went through. So that's what was keeping it. So we're going to need to do that first. So let me get the outside as well. There we go. That guy's ready to rock. So let me run through them and get this done, and then we can deal with the flash holes. All right, deburring and chamfering of the case mouths is done now. So let's have another go at setting up the pilot. There we go. We'll tighten it about, let's back it out just a touch. Make sure we got plenty of room to maneuver. Yeah, there we are. And where'd my Allen wrench go? There it is. So from this point, you just stick it in, give it a couple cranks, feel a good bit of resistance, and then you feel the resistance stop. And then you dump out some brass shavings. See if it's a little bit easier to align now that we've got the pilot in there. Kind of got to hunt for the flash hole just a touch. Yep, there it is. Man, that thing is wicked sharp. I guess I've used this one so much, this is probably pretty dull by this point perhaps, but this thing cuts through there like butter. Now, most Hornady brass is usually pretty okay. Like, I don't seem to find the really terrible burrs on the flash holes in Hornady brass that I find in some other manufacturers, but it still seems worthwhile. It only takes a minute and you only have to do it once in the lifetime of the brass, right? So why not? So this is as far as we're going to go today with brass prep. Like I mentioned earlier, in the future, maybe we'll turn the necks, but we're not going to do that today. Some folks will use a primer pocket uniformer to uniform the depth of the primer pockets. We're not going to worry about that either today, unless we get to the priming step. Like if we get to the priming step and some of the primers aren't going down to flush and I don't know, something weird like that, maybe we could revisit it, but I don't expect to run into that problem. I already did this one, right? So that's it, folks. I'll see you guys here in a minute when we're ready to install the primers. So I just finished up the flash hole deburring and I thought I would show you guys the big old pile of brass on the bench. This is totally normal. Like when you're deburring flash holes, there's a decent amount of material that gets taken off. I remember back the first time I did this, I thought, holy crap, where is all this brass coming from and is this really necessary? But it's normal. But this step, totally optional. You know, if you're just getting into reloading or whatever and you're trying to accumulate all of your various tools and stuff, flash hole deburring, that's down the list. This is pretty optional. One thing I found interesting, the new brass was fine. I didn't feel any burrs. But once I went over to the fired brass from the factory ammunition, some of them had some pretty gnarly burrs in them. So it's interesting to see the flash holes felt a little bit different and the case lengths are different, right? All of that factory ammo brass was much shorter. But I did weigh some examples of both and they both weigh about 234 grains. Sometimes you have to be careful about that. Like one manufacturer, pretty much the same head stamp, but they're a little bit different. These seem to be pretty close. But these fired pieces from the factory ammo, I wanted to shoot some today to, show the process of reloading once fired cases, but after this, they'll be going into like just duty as like cider ammunition that we load up to adjust our scope and all of that sort of junk, or warm up the gun or whatever. And we'll mainly be using the, the new batch of brass that I bought. All right, let me get this cleaned up. All right, so our brass prep is done. That's the tedious part of reloading, is getting your brass to the point where it's ready for primer, powder, and bullets. So this seems like the appropriate time to talk through our load data. First of all, let's talk about our bullet lineup. On the left, we've got the 168 grain Speer Gold Dot. Next to it is the 175 grain Sierra Match King, then the 85 grain Berger Hybrid Target, the 208 grain ELD Match from Hornady, and the 220 grain Sierra Match King. So I was able to find exact load data for these specific bullets. For the 168 grain Gold Dot, Speer has data for it. We're going to be using Alliant Reloader 26, and we're going to shoot 76.0 grains. The Speer max charge was 78.1 grains. So I'm 2.1 grains below max. What I tried to do was take the max, I went down 2 grains and then rounded it off to the closest half grain. That's pretty much what I did for all of these. And I also looked at other sources. Sometimes it wasn't the exact same bullet, but I at least had one alternate data source that more or less agreed with these charge weights, right? In the case of this first one, the Speer Gold Dot, Alliant had data for 3 different Speer bullets from 165 up to 168 grains. And they had max charges in the 82 to 83 grain range. So a full 4 or 5 grains of powder more than the Gold Dot data. So this seems like a reasonable charge weight for a Reloader 26. Hopefully that makes sense. I try not to rely on one single load data source. I always kind of like a sanity check, an additional point of reference to make me feel a little bit better about the charges. So next, with the 175 grain Sierra Match King, we're going to shoot H4350, Hodgdon H4350, and we're going to shoot 69.0 grains. The Hodgdon site had this exact combination, and they showed a max charge of 71.0 grains. Next is the 185 grain Berger Hybrid Target. We're going to shoot H1000, and we're going to shoot 77.5 grains. The Berger manual shows a max charge of 79.5. With the 208 grain Hornady ELD Match, we're going to shoot Reloader 23, and we're going to shoot 70.0 grains. The Hornady manual maximum is 72 grains. And the 220 grain Sierra Match King, we're going to shoot Reloader 26. We're going to shoot 72.0 grains, and this came from Alliant. Their max charge was 74.2 grains, so we're 2.2 grains below on that guy. So those are our bullet and powder combinations and our charge weights. But the biggest thing that's missing here are the overall lengths. If you remember, back when we looked in the Hornady manual, it showed a SAMI maximum overall length for this cartridge as 3.340 inches. Most of these load data sources used 3.340 inches. There was only one exception. Hodgdon with the 175 grain Match King used 3.30. Now, one good thing about these Thompson Center Compass rifles is they have an extremely generous magazine. If we grab one of these rounds of PPU, I'll be able to show you. There you go. You can see how much extra space we've got with this round of the PPU ammo. I was playing around a little bit earlier. It looks like the max overall length for this magazine is 3.475. So that's 135 thousandths longer than SAMI maximum overall length that we can fit into this magazine. I can tell you right now, we are going to need to take advantage of it, because my tests with these bullets of maximum overall length shows that this gun has got a super long throat. It's got a freaking giraffe throat. And I want to show you guys the way I used to determine that. So what I've done here is I sacrificed one of our pieces of Hornady brass. This piece has been resized, and then I took a Dremel tool and cut a big slit down the neck. I keep a case like this for everything I load. I find it really useful. I mean, you can use it like this is a 208 grain ELD. They work nice for eyeballing your seating depth as far as how much of your bullet and the case neck are making contact. And I also find it a pretty repeatable way of figuring out my maximum overall length. So as you can tell, this kind of goes in a little bit stiff, like you can pull it in and out, but it's reasonably tight. and when it gets loose, you just pinch it a little bit to keep a little bit of tension there. But what you can do is just barely start it. So there she is, just barely started. So you take the rim and put it up under the extractor and then just bend it in. And, well, you can't see because the scope's in the way, but yeah, it's too long to fit through the window right now. So I tell you what, let's go in a little bit farther. All right, I think I finally figured out a length that will fit through the ejection port. Okay, so our starting number is 3.642. So we put it in under the extractor, tilt it until it's straight, and then slowly push the bolt forward. There we go. And then we go ahead and push the bolt all the way in, close the bolt handle, and then open it back up. Now you want to put your finger in there to keep it straight. So, you know, the round's going to want to tilt upward as it comes out, and we want to keep it straight so the bullet doesn't get disturbed, because the rifling has now pushed the bullet in to the case. So let's see what the overall length is. It's like 3.619. Now the number I had written down earlier whenever I tested this before I started the video was 3.618. I generally find this is repeatable to just within a thousandth or two. So let's back it out and do it again. Go 3.677. I don't think that'll fit. There we go. Starting at 3.650. In it goes. Close the bolt. And then open it up. Next reading is 3.619, the exact same number we got last time. So it gives me some idea about where the rifling starts. Now the bad news is with this frickin' 208 ELDM, it's 3.619 for crying out loud. The recommended overall length is 3.340. That is 278 thousandths of jump before we engage the rifling from the recommended overall length. That's a quarter of an inch. So now that you've seen how I do this, let's jump back out and look at the numbers for the rest of the bullets. So here are the max overall lengths that I came up with for each of these bullets. If we loaded all of these to 3.340 inches, these would be our jump numbers, right? 158 thousandths for the 168 grain gold dot, 120 thousandths for the 175 grain Match King, and so on, right? Like the worst is the 185 grain Burger. It would be a 0.294 inch jump. I think this is why the last time I shot this gun with these three types of factory ammo, they all shot terrible. The throat is just terribly long. So we need to try and stretch out our rounds a little bit, or at least that's what I want to try here first, is to stretch out these rounds as much as we can to minimize that jump. We've got a lot of testing, in our future with different seating depths, and we'll circle back around and load some at 3.34 inches and see how they shoot. But today, I want to shoot them long. I want to try and get them a little bit closer to the lands. As I mentioned, our magazine length is 3.475. That can fit in the magazine. So I chose that as my starting point. And what I did was I took my split case, and I tell you what, this is the 208 ELD. That's not a good one to illustrate what I'm talking about. Let me grab the 175 grain Sierra Match King, and what I want to do, I want to put a little Sharpie mark on the bullet right at the boat tail so it's a little bit easier for us to see. There we go. See, I just drew a little line on there. So I put it in my split case. Let me put it at 3.475 and we'll have a look. All right, pretty close. It's 3.473. And you see where our Sharpie mark is in there. And we have almost total contact between the neck of the case and the bearing surface of the bullet, but not quite. Like it just didn't quite get all the way down. Now, this 300 Winchester Magnum has a very short neck anyway. So I really want to see that bullet far enough down in there so that the bearing surface makes total contact. Now, here it is at 3.425. There we go. See our blue mark now? It's clearly down a little bit below that neck-shoulder junction. We've got complete contact between the bearing surface of the bullet and the neck. Now this is 85 thousandths longer than the SAMI maximum overall length, and the Hodgson load data had this bullet seated to 3.30 inches, so it's 125 thousandths longer than that. But this depth results in a jump to the lands of only 35 thousandths. That's much more reasonable. We've got great contact there where we need contact. The round fits in the magazine. Yep, fits in the magazine, no problem. And we've only got 35 thousandths of jump to the lands. So that's what we're going to shoot with this guy. Usually going longer isn't a big deal until you start jamming into the lands, and I've always heard that can do weird things with pressure, although I haven't really observed it myself. Usually when you seat things a little bit longer, you know, it increases your effective case capacity, which seems to lower pressures. We lose a little bit of velocity, but we've got more case capacity, and it can usually be made up. You know, we can pick up that velocity with a higher powder charge, but this shouldn't be any safety risk, I guess is what I'm getting at. Going a little bit longer hasn't ever gotten me in trouble. You know, this may be the time. Maybe I'll blow my face off today, but I think we'll be just fine. Now, I did this same thing, this same sort of exercise, looking at the seating depth and considering magazine length and all that crap. These are the numbers I came up with. The first two, the 168 grain gold dot is going to be at 3.440. This 175 is at 3.425. And then the last three, the 185, the 208 and the 220, those are all going to be at 3.475, which is our maximum magazine length. Now, you'll notice the Burger and the Hornady, they still have a significant amount of jump. 159 thousandths for the Burger, 143 thousandths for the Hornady. Like, that's still a bunch. So I don't know why in the world they feel the need to chamber these guns with these throats that are so godforsaken long. It's aggravating. It is really aggravating. Now, on the other side of this, the 6.5 Creedmoor Thompson Center Compass, we have never shot any bullet that we could not get to the lands and fit in a magazine. And then our first test here with the 300 Win Mag, there's only one bullet. The 175, we could get it to the lands and still fit in the magazine. I didn't like that seating depth though. You know, I felt like we needed to go a little bit shorter, but that guy was the only one we could get to the lands. Hopefully all that made sense. It can be a little bit confusing, and it sucks having to go this far away from the published load data on length, but it is what it is, and I think that's probably the only way we're going to find accuracy in this gun. So hopefully some of these loads will shoot. Let's see, so I showed you the final load data, right? Including the overall lengths and everything. Good. I think at this point we're ready to move on, and the first step of moving on is going to be to install our primers. So I'm using an RCBS hand priming tool, and I've got our primers in the tray. So now it's as easy as sticking them in there and squeezing. And there you have it. I always like to drag my finger over them, make sure that the primer is flush or just below flush, and that is perfect. So these guys will go in very quickly, and we'll be ready to start weighing out powder. All right, so our first 5 charges for the Spear Gold Dots is Reloader 26. Now, the quickest way to blow your face off is to have a powder mix-up. So one rule I try my best to live by is to only have one powder on the bench at any given time. So all of our other powders for today are off the bench, sitting in the floor here next to me. So no mix-ups. I like to use a little bowl, dump us out some powder there. Now what I want to use is the Lee Powder Measure Kit. This is just a kit full of little yellow scoops, which a bunch of them are over on my bench. This is probably going to be one of these big guys, which you can tell there's no powder residue on them. I've never even used them. So let's start with this 4cc guy and see what charge weight that gives us. Try and scoot this up so you can see the readout on the scale. So here's a full scoop. Nope, that's still not big enough. All right, here's the biggest one. This is a 4.3cc scoop. 62. So that's all we're going to get. Then from there, I'll just trickle it in by hand. I do have a trickler, which makes this a whole lot easier. Show you what that looks like. There you go. This is a Frankfurt Arsenal trickler. You put powder in the top and it trickles out the little spout nice and slow. If you're loading a bunch of charges with one powder, then it's definitely worth the time to fill this up and use it. But since I'm only doing 5 charges with each powder, it's easier to just go ahead and do it by hand. And I'll tell you another thing I should do before I even start here. One thing I always like to do, this scale is a $15 to $20 scale off of Amazon. Unfortunately, they don't sell this exact model anymore. This is such an amazing little scale. It's been great. I've been using it, I think, almost 2 years now. What I've got, I just dumped them out off camera, of course, is a little check weight kit. This is a little thingy full of these little check weights. And these, so like this big one right here is a 20 grain weight. So if we drop that in there, our scale should read 20.0, and it does. There's 40.0, 50.0. Here's a 5 grainer, 55.0. Here's 2 more, should be 57. 2 more still, 59. And then here's a little half grain, 59.5. So this scale is reading my check weights perfectly. Really helps to build confidence in the accuracy of your charges. These check weight kits are pretty pricey, like 30 bucks or so, but it can even be something as simple as a bullet. Like maybe you keep one golden bullet on your bench that you know that, okay, every time I measure this bullet, it weighs 184.3 grains or whatever. And every time you get ready to use your scale, you throw it on there just to build some confidence. Okay, 76.0 grains is what we were after. So there's a big old scoop. Trickle, 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 trickle some more. 76.0. Yep, right on the money. I've got a funnel from the Lyman Precision Funnel Kit with the 30 caliber insert in there. It's a pretty nice little funnel kit, but a basic $4 funnel works as well. All right, in it went. So let's have a look and see if we can tell what the case fill looks like. I need a flashlight. Yep, as always, this is a tough thing to get on camera, but it's well down below the shoulder. About in, I don't know, this area right here is where it comes up to. And I think our case fill is going to be pretty reasonable with all of these charges today. Nothing's going to be way up here and get compressed really hard or leave a ton of case capacity left over. The next charge after this with the 175 grain Sierra Match King, the 69 grains of H4350, will probably be our least amount of case fill. All right, back for charge 2. I've already spilled powder all over the bench. I kind of overfilled my little bowl of powder, didn't I? Yep, went a little bit over that time. Scoop some out. Try again. There we are, 76. Looks good. All right, let me weigh out these next 3, and we'll go ahead and seat these 168 grain gold dots. All right, so my first 5 charges are weighed out. I want to look down inside, visual inspection, make sure there's powder in all of them, make sure that the level looks about the same in all of them, and these look good. And once I've done that, I'll go ahead and just cap them with bullets. Now, we're using the Hornady bullet seating die, and if you remember, I've got a second seating stem for this guy. So for each bullet we're going to seat, what I'll do is you just pop off this top part. This is the micro-just seating stem thingy. And then you just flip it upside down and out comes your seating stem. If you take one of your bullets and just set the seating stem on it, what you're looking for is the most contact between the bullet and the seating stem that's available for you. And generally the best way to tell that is to just kind of wiggle. And see this very little wiggle, like this is an excellent fit, or it feels like an excellent fit. So let's pull this other one out of the box and see what it feels like. Okay, here's this guy. Look at that. That's not a good fit at all. Now, one of our other bullets may fit better with this stem, and I'll be checking every single bullet with both stems to see which one fits the best. Yeah, that one's just perfect. Now, what you'll run into if you have an extremely poor fitting stem like this, sometimes you'll get marks around the bullet. And especially if you're loading a compressed charge where seating the bullet is going to crunch the powder down, there's a lot of force applied between the seating stem and the bullet during that operation, and you can end up with very distinct rings around your bullet, which can, deform the bullet and stuff. You don't want that. We don't want that. We want that. All right. So the seating stem we've chosen, we just pop it down in there, make sure that it drops down in there okay. Put our micro-just seating stem back on there, and actually I'll go ahead and just back that guy way out. See, it's got a little scale on it. Okay, we're ready to install this guy. Now with this Hornady, your seating dies are different, and you always want to check your die instructions. But here with this Hornady, what you do is you take an empty case and run it up all the way to the top. And then you screw down the die until you feel it touch. Yeah, that feels like it right there. So we've screwed it down until we feel it touch the case, and then you want to back it out at least one turn. So we'll go right at one turn and then tighten down the lock ring. There it is right there. So that's all there is to it. So let's get this started. Our target overall length is 3.440. Doesn't feel like it even touched the bullet, or if it did, it was just barely. So I'm going to go ahead and go down a pretty good chunk. There we go. That got a hold of some of it. So now our bullet's been seated a little bit, and our current number is 3.564. So we need to go down about 124 thousandths. There's 50, 100, 10, 20. We'll go down 122. We'll see where that puts us. That should be just a couple thousandths long still. Yep, 3.445. So we're 5 thousandths long. What I want to do is go ahead and seat a couple of these guys and get a bit of an average. These gold dots are pretty uniform, but they are soft points. Some of the points are a little bit pointier than others, and a little bit of variation in overall length is to be expected. There's a 3.443, a 3.446, and the 3.445. I'll tell you what, I'm going to go down 5 thousandths and we're going to call that good. Yeah, that should put this guy just about perfect. Maybe a little bit too far. 3.437. The next guy here is 3.440. So that's perfect. I'm going to go ahead and seat the remaining two that we haven't seated yet. There we go. Now, what I want to do now is use the Hornady bullet comparator to get a measurement from cartridge base to ogive on these. This should be extremely consistent. Looks like 2.860 or 2.8595. The next piece is exactly the same, 2.860. Third piece, 2.860. So I'm going to write this down, 2.860, as our cartridge base to ogive number. And this number is very useful for dialing it in next time. Like maybe we go out to the range and this is a great shoot and load and we want to duplicate what we did. This extremely stable cartridge base to ogive measurement is easy to dial back in exactly the way you had it before. So that's it for that row, folks. These are our very first 5 hand loads for the 300 Winchester Magnum. Feeling pretty good about them. So this video at this point is probably incredibly long. So I'm not going to subject you to this same powder weighing and bullet seating process 4 more times. It's all going to go exactly the same. We're going to pick the seating stem that fits our bullet the best. We're going to dial in the overall length that we want. We're going to record the cartridge base to ogive number, and then we move on to the next one. So I tell you what, let's just go ahead and get out on the range unless something comes up. If something comes up that I think is interesting, I'll flip the camera back on and document it, but I expect this part to go extremely easy. So let's just head to the range. Okay, folks, time to see if we can get this guy to shoot. Let's review the specs on the gun one more time. This is a Thompson Center Compass. It has a 24-inch barrel, which is threaded, and you'll see that I've got my suppressor and magneto-speed chronograph screwed on there right now. It is a 1 in 10 twist barrel, and I'm using a 6-24 power Vortex Viper PST Gen 1 on it right now. The only modification I've done to the gun so far is to lighten up the trigger. I used the same technique that I used in the 6.5 Creedmoor update video where I removed one of the screws to lighten it up. It results in about a 2.5, I think, 2 or 3 pound trigger, but it does render the gun no longer drop safe. As long as the gun's on safe, it's okay, but when it's in the fire position, it is not drop safe. The stock trigger weight, which is drop safe, is not half bad. Like you get in there and adjust it to as light as you can. I don't know, it's 4 or 5 pounds, maybe something like that. I shot the 6.5 Creedmoor that way for 1,500 rounds before I changed it. So I'm not necessarily advocating for this trigger mod that I've done, but it does make shooting off the bench a little bit easier. We've got a target at 100 yards. The dots on the target are 1 inch in diameter. I shot a few rounds of factory ammo to get the gun sighted in here just a few minutes ago. The temperature is right about freezing. We had a heavy frost this morning and it's just now burning off. So it's 32, 33 degrees, something like that. The winds, I've noticed a few gusts here and there, but it's mostly pretty calm. Now the magazine in this rifle is a 4-round magazine. So if I want to get all 5 in here, I need to put one in the chamber and then top off the magazine. I'll tell you what, the magazine on this 300 Win Mag doesn't go in and out quite as easily as the one in the 6.5 Creedmoor. I'm hoping that's going to work in over time. I don't know, we'll see. So let's start out with hand loads. We're going to start with the 168 grain Gold Dot and 76 grains of Alliant Reloader 26. If you remember, our overall length is 3.440, so 100 thousandths longer than the book calls for. So interested to see how these guys do. All right, one's already in the chamber, so let's see if she'll shoot. All right, so we successfully fired our first hand load and the gun didn't blow up. That's a good start. Having a quick inspection of this piece of brass, it looks just great. The velocity on that was 28.72, which I think is pretty modest for a 168 grain bullet. Let's see if they'll group. All right, thank God. I've been freaking out about this gun just being a piece of crap, and our very first group is stacking them right in there. Good. Man, that is a huge relief. Okay, velocity 28.66 with a 7.9 feet per second standard deviation. That's good stuff. Now I assume we're going to be able to get a whole lot more velocity than that with a bullet that light, you know, different powder selection or working our way up there with Reloader 26 later or something like that. But we got to take baby steps, right? Next up is the 175 grain Sierra Match King. This is with H4350, 69 grains of it to be more specific. Now this one, we're 35 thousandths off the lands with a 3.425 inch overall length. So let's see how these guys do. All right, first shot velocity with that guy was 2,920 feet per second. So we're already faster than we were with the lighter Gold Dot. The brass looks okay. I am seeing a little bit of primer cratering, which we'll look at later, but it doesn't seem severe. So let's keep on shooting. Man, I can't tell you how happy this makes me. Another great group there with the 175 Sierra Match King. Velocity 29.39 with a 14.3 feet per second standard deviation. And a pretty sweet group. So I'm afraid we might be about to hit a brick wall though, because we're going from the least amount of bullet jump. You know, that's 175 grain Sierra Match King, we had 35 thousandths of jump. And now we're switching to the bullet with the most jump. This is the 185 grain Berger Hybrid Target. We're loading it out at full magazine length of 3.475, and it's still got that much jump, so we'll see. I'm afraid I might have got one a little bit too long. I can't get the 4th round into the magazine. No big deal. I'll probably just single feed those last couple. All right, let's see what happens. Yeah, once again, no pressure signs here. I forgot to mention the load. This is H1000, 77.5 grains of H1000. The first shot was 2,895 feet per second, and I don't see any issues on the brass. All right, as we thought it might, the group goes to crap with the Berger there. Velocity was 28.98 with a 12.0 feet per second standard deviation. So it could have been worse. The shifting point of impact is kind of weird to me, like that. The difference between that first and second group, I mean, that's a little bit more than a 2 MOA shift. And then this one back up in the middle. All right, so let's see, we're 15 rounds in. Recoil hasn't been terrible so far. Like that 185 was the first one where I started kind of feeling it. The loads with the lighter bullets weren't too bad. My front rest is kind of banging around a little bit. The front sling stud is sitting right in front of here, so during recoil it kind of hits and makes things bounce around a little bit. But it does help to absorb a little bit of recoil, I guess. I'd really like to have a Boyd stock on this like we put on the 6.5 Creedmoor. And if it's going to be a decent shooting gun, I'll probably do that pretty soon. So, all right, time for a break. Okay, time to get back to work. Next up is the 208 grain Hornady ELD match. This is 70 grains of Reloader 23. This is another one that's going to have quite a bit of jump, 143 thousandths of jump to the lands, which is only about 15 thousandths less than the Berger hybrid target we just shot. So we might be in for another crappy group here. So let's see how they do. All right, our first shot is at 2,761 feet per second. The brass looks fine. Holy crap, the sun came out and my camera is all screwed up now. All right, that's a little bit better. All right, let's see if these guys group. All right, so that wasn't quite as tight as the first two groups, but still better than the Berger, right? 2761 feet per second, 15.8 feet per second standard deviation. So that shows a little bit of promise, right? Maybe that's something we can work with in the future with that bullet. Tighten up those groups a little bit. So next is the 220 grain Sierra Match King, and we're shooting 72 grains of Reloader 26. I ran into something weird when I was loading these. I almost turned the camera back on, but decided not to in the end. When I was measuring cartridge base to ogive with the Hornady bullet comparator, I had two rounds that measured quite a bit different than the others. So I basically got a three shots with one measurement and 2 shots with another. So I don't know if somewhere in the past, maybe I mixed lot numbers of bullets and they ended up in that box, or what the heck happened, but I want to keep my eye on it. The first 2 shots, we'll see if they group together, and then we'll see if the other 3 shoot into the same group or perhaps shoot off a little bit. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, we're back to a Sierra Match King with an ogive shape that's a little bit easier to get close to the lands, right? We're at 3.475 inches, which is full magazine length, but we're only 26 thousandths off the lands. So this is even closer than we were with our first 2 groups. So let's see what happens here. Okay, first shot was 2749 feet per second. Our brass looks perfect. All right, so this first 2 look good. Now let's switch over to the other 3 that had the slightly different cartridge base to ogive number. Yeah, that works for me. Holy crap, folks. Don't screw it up. Ah, that's okay. It felt like a good shot. Yeah, we might have found a bullet this guy really liked. 2720 feet per second, 20.3 standard deviation. That's not great, but hey, it's a place to start from, right? Like, that's a really, really good start for our 5 hand loads. So it's time to leave the wonderful world of hand loading and go to the uncertain world of factory ammo. We're going to start out with, you can't see that, yeah, there you go, the PPU, this stuff, 165 grainers. So as I load more into this magazine, I'm finding that 3 rounds is really the comfortable spot. Like, you can squeeze the 4th one in there, but 3 of them go in much more comfortably. So that's probably what I'm going to stick with this guy. All right, let's see how bad the group is with this PPU. Ah, that last shot just had to go wild on us. It was putting together a halfway decent little group there. Velocity 2959, 19.6 feet per second standard deviation. So next up is the Hornady American Whitetail, which is upside down. There you go, that stuff. These use the 180 grain Hornady interlock bullet. And I guess one thing we could look at, on the box it does say these are rated at 2,960 feet per second. So we'll see how our numbers compare to that. Here we go. All right, so the group's garbage, but our velocity was 2946, so we're 14 feet per second slower than the box said we should, so that's pretty much right on the money. A surprisingly good standard deviation number of 8.5. Pretty good stuff. Okay, one more group to go, and this is the Hornady Precision Hunter that uses the 200 grain ELDX bullet. Let's see what the box velocity is with these. 2,860 feet per second is our expected velocity. So let's see how they shoot. All right, so they shoot pretty bad. Our velocity was 2835, which is about 25 feet per second slower than the box said we should be. That's pretty close. So there's a lot of ugly groups down there on that target, but I feel like we've learned a lot, and I feel very optimistic that with careful bullet selection for this gun, we're going to be able to get it to shoot. So let's get back to the bench and talk it all out. All right, folks, let's have a look at some of the fired brass, and we'll start, these three rows over here are the factory ammo. Here are a couple pieces of the PPU. It's always a good idea to get a good look at some factory ammo in a new gun, you know, see what sort of pressure signs might be present in factory fired rounds. And these just look great. Don't see anything that causes me alarm. There's maybe just the tiniest little bit of primer cratering, but then again, not really. I mean, if it's there, it's not bad. Primers are nice and rounded. No odd marks on the case heads. That's just good stuff. So these two are from the Hornady American Whitetail. Little bit flatter primers. Nothing severe, just maybe just a touch of flattening. Not bad. No other damage to the case head whatsoever. Edge of the primers still have, you know, a little bit of roundness to them, but they just seem a touch flatter than we saw with the PPU. Again, with these, nothing weird going on. I've had a pretty close look through these, you know, just first time with the gun, wanted to make sure there weren't any neck splitting or anything weird going on, and there's really not. Just looks like good fired brass. This is the Hornady Precision Hunter, and these primers don't seem as flat. It might have just been brand of primers. Tell you what, let's just grab one of each. So yeah, so maybe that was just a, you know, loaded with a little softer primer that was more prone to flattening. Nothing serious at all, just kind of making something out of nothing here. But Precision Hunter was good all around as well. Here's a random piece from our hand loads. I'm not going to show you all of them individually, you know, from each load we shot, because they all look the same. They all look great. Might be able to notice, like I was saying, maybe just a little bit of cratering on the primer, but certainly nothing severe. Nice rounded edges around our primer, and just good looking stuff. Yeah, that's just good stuff. This was a new piece. This was from, the first two rows were new brass. These were the once fired stuff, and they all look equally awesome. So that's enough of that. Okay, so let's take another look at these groups. We started off great. That 168 grain Gold Dot was a .695 5-inch group. And right after that, the 175 grain Match King was a .758. That was really good stuff. I didn't realize how much I had screwed up that 220 grain Sierra Match King group. Right, bottom row on the left. Those first four were stacking right in there. I mean, we were one shot away from a 0.3 or 0.4 inch group, and that one that flew to the left turned it into a 1.017 inch group. I still like the looks of that group. I have very high hopes for the 220 grain Sierra Match King. Same thing with the 175 grain Match King. I've got a bunch of both of those bullets, so they'll be fun to play with. Third group on the top, the 185 grain Burger. Just awful. 1.971 inches. Wasn't even really trying to group. You know, one target isn't going to tell us the whole story, but I really think we're on the right track here. Focusing in on that long throat and the amount of jump. That Burger, I'm sure it's an awesome bullet, but it ain't going to work in this gun with this throat. It just ain't going to happen. Right next to it, the 208 grain ELD Match. That wasn't terrible. Like that's a 1.088 inch group. It definitely wasn't trying to stack them in there, but still reasonably respectable, right? That's not the worst thing in the world. And then our last three groups on the bottom, the factory ammo, all of it was garbage. 2.752 inches, 1.784 inches, and 2.493 inches. Just terrible. And this is just further confirmation that the results I got the first time I shot these loads and they were terrible was legit, right? I mean, this gun isn't going to shoot these. I mean, I have to wonder if this gun would shoot any factory ammo, because it's all going to be down at that SAMI maximum overall length or shorter. So I have a feeling this gun would struggle with just about any factory ammo you threw at it. I'm pretty happy with the velocities we saw. We were lagging maybe about 100 feet per second behind the factory ammo, which is good, right? Our first time out reloading for a cartridge, first time ever loading for a gun. I'm not trying to push them hard. So the fact that we're only lagging about 100 feet per second behind factory ammo of similar bullet weight is a really good start if you ask me. So I would consider this an extremely educational and very successful range trip. I feel like we learned a lot. I feel like we're on the right track. Bullet selection, I feel, is going to be critical in this gun. And as you can see, I've been pulling out a bunch more bullets to see how they fit in this gun and to figure out whether they can get anywhere close to the lands. So we'll get to those here in just a minute. A couple of things I want to clean up. Holy crap, my entire collet versus bushing confusion. It wasn't even a confusion. Like I sat down and started editing the video and I'm like, why was I saying collet? I don't know. My brain just went fuzzy. Now there are collet resizing dies. Like there's some of them right here. The Lee collet neck sizing die. And if you pull one of these guys apart, it's got a mandrel and a collet. This is a collet. This is not a bushing. My Hornady uses bushings, not collets. So if you found all of that annoying, I'm with you, man. I was annoyed too, sitting there editing the video. I wanted to reach through the screen and choke myself. Another thing I should have mentioned back when I was talking about our reloading equipment and going into all of this detail with the Hornady match grade bushing die, like you don't need to go this direction. If maybe you're just looking to get into reloading for your 300 Win Mag and that's your entry into reloading, like this was way complicated. It's too much to think about. Don't worry about it. Just get a standard set of dies, something like a Hornady custom grade die set or a Lee set or a Redding set or just about any of the standard die sets. They don't use bushings. They use a tight section up in the neck of the die and then they use an expander ball that gets pulled through the case to expand the neck out to the appropriate size for seating a bullet. So there's no freaking bushings to worry about and measuring necks and all of the garbage that I spent so much time on in this video. And I should have made that more clear. I'm afraid I might have scared somebody off who was looking into, what it takes to get started. So with our bushing die, I'm definitely going to need to turn the necks on these cases. The more I think about it, we're just not going to get consistent results unless we do. And that makes the bushing decision even more complicated. Like those necks that right now, what were they averaging? Like 13.5 thousandths. So if we need to turn them down to 13 or maybe 12.5 or something like that to make them uniform, then that's going to need a tighter bushing. So I may end up ordering, remember I have the 333 and the 332. I definitely want to get a 331, and I may just go ahead and get a freaking 330. That way we're ready for whatever may come when we get to neck turning. So I feel like there's a million more things to talk about, but we'll just save them for the next video. But I do want to cover, like I mentioned, I pulled out 16, I think it was, 16 more 30 caliber bullets and measured their maximum overall length in this gun. I was extremely surprised. I found very few that I think are going to work well for us. I had high hopes for there's a 208 grain Hornady match. I thought it had a pretty fat ogive. I thought it might be similar to the Sierra Match Kings where we could get these tucked up near the lands, and it just didn't happen. This bullet in particular had about 77 thousandths of jump to the lands at full magazine length. Not SAMI length, full magazine length. It still has 77 thousandths of jump. The 225 grain version, same bullet, a little bit heavier, is just slightly better at 67,000. So close, but not quite. Tell you a couple that were surprisingly good. The 180 grain Hornady SST. This guy is right at the lands at magazine length. And the bullet's long enough to where at that length, there's still plenty of bearing surface down in the neck, right? Got plenty of bullet to get a hold of, and we can get them near the lands. So the 180 grain SST is going to join the good ones we found from today. The 174 grain Sierra Match King, the 220 grain Sierra Match King. I need to get some 200 grain Sierra Match Kings to check those out. That'll probably be down the road. Like I think we should shoot through some of the 220 grain Match Kings I've got before we go buying more crap. The 168 grain Hornady Match is actually not bad. I had like 18 thousandths of jump with these at mag length. So that guy might get added to the list. The 167 grain Lapua Sinar. These were reasonable. These were right at the lands at magazine length. However, the bullet length didn't quite give us complete contact, which isn't a big thing. Like I'm making a bigger deal out of that than I need to. You know, like the bullet does not have to have complete contact between bearing surface and neck. I'm just a little bit nervous, I guess, because I'm new to this cartridge and that neck just seems so freaking short. It's probably nothing to worry about. We could probably use these just fine, seated out that long, but we'll get to it eventually. I tell you what, here's a list. Here's all 16 of the bullets I just measured with their numbers. I was surprised to see the worst one I measured was the new 165 grain Sierra Game Changer. That guy needed to be at 3.610 to hit the lands. So we'd have 135 thousandths of jump with that guy at full magazine length. All right, two more quick things and then I'll let you go. I do have a big old box of these guys, these round-nosed Hornady interlocks. These are the 220 grain Hornady interlock. These guys, we can get almost 70 thousandths of jam into the lands at magazine length. So no surprise, right, with that ogive shape. So we might give these guys a try. That would probably put a serious wallop on a deer, but not exactly a long-range bullet, right? All right, folks, I think the marathon is over. I feel good, though. I feel like I got most of what I needed to say out. Those of you who like the long videos, I hope you enjoyed it. Those of you who hate the long videos, go jump in a lake. So that's where we'll leave it. A huge thank you again to everybody that made this possible. All the people who donated to the gun fund for the 300 Win Mag, or bought me equipment and just generally support me a whole lot more than I deserve. Thank you guys very much. So that's it, folks. I will see you next time.